Hey everybody, it's day 4 of our basic course. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to create multiple layers. I have all my supplies here. I'm using all 4x6 photographs. I have a few sheets of this pattern paper, and this is Lakeside grid paper from the Lazy Days collection. All my colors today are pretty much based on the pattern paper I chose. I also have my die sets, and that one was there by accident. I will not be using die set D today. Alrighty, but I do have sets A, B, and C, and the grid die. This is pattern number 125. And as you can see, there's these 1-inch squares, which you could use the 1-inch square from set A, but to fill in those spaces, we're going to actually be using the grid die. And this is a puzzle pattern, or also an asymmetrical pattern. And today I don't have a second pattern because we're going to take this one and mirror it. This is one trick you can do with many of our patterns, is to mirror the pattern to make the 2-page spread. And this works especially well, in my opinion, with the puzzle patterns. So be sure to go on the pattern gallery and check out a lot of our puzzle patterns. So that is one neat trick for a 2-page spread we will be trying out today. All right, everything's gathered. Be sure to pause the video if you still want to gather your supplies. Today you will need a variety of photos to make sure some can be cut larger, medium, and small. All right, so let's get started. All right, first we're going to be cutting the square from set A. And now remember, we are mirroring the pattern. So whatever we cut on the one side, we're going to have to cut it twice. So I'm grabbing the 4x4 square from set A. And for this one, I'm going to cut it with this striped paper. Kind of has Disney colors. Well, it is. I believe this is from Echo Park. They have a series of Disney-inspired patterned paper. All right, so I'm just going to use my scissors to cut around it carefully. So you probably, at this point, have the hang of it, right? You probably know the drill pretty good. But yeah, just take your time. This time I did use washi tape because it is stripes and I did not want them to be cut crooked. So some pattern papers, it doesn't matter, but some of them, like mine, I'm like, no, I want it to be straight. So use washi tape if you need to. All right, I have my first square for my page. By the way, I am using the Sizzix Big Kick machine. The bottom plate is magnetic, which is wonderful. Just real quick, I am using a totally different type of pattern paper for the other side of my layout. And again, I'm using my scissors to cut around the square. But back to the machine, I am using a magnetic plate. If you don't have one, that's fine, but I really do like mine because it keeps the dies in place a little bit better. I also have a plastic plate, and then right now, as you can see, I put the die facing up, then my paper, and then another plastic plate on top. All right, so I rolled it through, and now we have both of our squares for our double page layout. Next, I'm going to be getting set C. This is the 4x5 square die here. And as I've mentioned before, 4x5 squares means 4x5 squares on the grid paper, right? Because the actual measurements are 4 3/8 by 5.5 inches. So again, I'm going to be using this striped paper. Yeah, part of playing the page is also deciding on where you want to place different color cardstock and pattern paper. So do that before you get started, or do it right now if you need to. Pause the video and decide which colors you want to put where. And before, I mentioned in a previous video that I make sure I put things in threes or a triangle. You don't have to do it that way, but it's just one design rule to help you with your design. All right, again, I'm using washi tape because it is a striped paper, or that striped paper again. And yeah, so I was just pointing out, I always cut this on the curve, so the curve's facing the bottom, I guess. Anyway, I put it through the machine on the curved side. I find it cuts better. And with the plastic dies, or plastic plates, excuse me, I try to like flip them every other time I cut. So you cut it one way, and then for the next cut, you'll flip the plastic plate over. Seems to last a little bit longer that way, but if you have any tips and tricks about the plastic plates, let us know in the comments below. We would like to hear from you, and so with the rest of the community. All right, I'm also using this paper again, this kind of old time, looks kind of like newspaper with fun headlines. This time you may have noticed I didn't use washi tape because it doesn't really matter to me if this paper is a little bit crooked. It kind of looks crooked either way, right? All right, got this block. And now we're ready to add these to our grid paper. All right, first I'm going to place this larger piece. And from the pattern, I know it goes into that bottom right corner, so that was easy to figure out. For the square, so right above the big block, there is 3 1-inch squares, so I know I need to count 4 over, like I showed with my finger, and I know that bottom right corner of this square piece goes there. So hopefully that helped you figure out the placement, because it's not necessarily easy to figure out where that center square goes. All right, now I just added my Re-positionable glue. But as beginner, definitely look at the pattern if you need to, count over the squares to see where everything needs to be placed. But as you practice this a lot more, it'll be easier for you. Alrighty, so now we're gonna mirror what we just placed. So since that one was on the bottom right corner, it goes on the bottom left corner on the other side. I was just checking to make sure my stripes were going the same direction. It's a little detail, but it does make your page look a little nicer to see that the stripes are all the same. So that one was basically placed right next to the other rectangle. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the square. I know there was 4, I need to count 4 squares, and that bottom left corner this time goes there. All right, so we got our large pieces down, and you can see that they mirror each other. And now we just need to cut the medium and the little small square there. So let's get to it. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is cut that purple size, which you can see the measurements below the pattern if you need to. This is the 3x5 square die from set B, and I will be cutting with this one twice. And my photos were, the subjects were too big for me to cut to the matting size, but if you want to, you can use this die to cut a paper mat and then cut the photos with the layering dies. But like I said, mine just were a little bit too big for the layering size, so I will not be using a mat this time. I am using washi tape because this die was placed right on that bottom edge. In fact, I'm going to change it because I didn't trust that it would cut through correctly. Sometimes if it's off, your photo will be a little bit crooked, and that's not my goal, obviously. So, and yeah, definitely take your time, check the front and back. I like to flip my photo over to make sure that my die is not going past my photograph, because we want it to cut into the photograph, right? All right, I got this first piece. Now I'm going to cut this one with the same die. So remember, we're mirroring the pattern, so pretty much whatever you make on the one pattern, you need to cut it twice, right? And again, I'm putting my dies in at an angle just like I did here. We find that the die machine gives it a cleaner cut when you put the dies in at an angle. All right, got my second piece. Now I'm going to put this one away. And let's see here. All right, so I'm going to be cutting this piece. it's pink, so we know it's from set C, and it's the 4x3 square die. Again, I am not matting these ones either, but you can decide whether or not you want to mat them and use the layering die for your photo. All right, cut it through, and now it's pretty easy, right? All right, now I'm going to cut my second photo with the same die. Just take your time as you put the die on top. Just figure out what part you want to crop. Sometimes it's a difficult decision. All right, this time again I used washi tape because I had the die right on the edge of my photograph. So definitely use that washi tape if you need to. You don't want to have to do it over again because you accidentally cut it crooked, right? All right, there's that piece. So now I'm going to put this pink die away. And now we're going to do the square, which you can see out of the 3 squares in that pattern, well, except for the 1-inch squares, it's pretty much the medium size. It's the 3x3 square. And again, you can look at the pattern measurements below if it's confusing about what size is on the pattern, because some people look at our patterns and think, I don't know which size, which one is which. But you can always look at those measurements and at least one of them is a 3x3 square size, or it would say 3¼ by 3¼ inches. All right, so I got that one, and I have this die here, or excuse me, this photo. I got a lot of my words mixed up. Yeah, so make sure, I definitely recommend planning out the photos before you start these pages and make sure they are going to fit in the crop space. All right, so I'm done with these cuts, and now we can place them on our grid paper. So as I just pointed out, this one that was cut with die set B, we can easily see that it goes in that top left corner here. So that was pretty easy to figure out. And the square piece, you can see it goes right into that bottom left corner. So at least these pieces were pretty easy to figure out where to put on your grid paper. And now this one goes directly on that top right corner. So these were pretty easy to figure out, right? So now we're going to mirror those again. So I'm going to start with the big piece, and it goes way on the opposite side. So this time, instead of the left, it's going to go on that top right corner. So it mirrors the other side exactly. The small square is pretty easy to figure out. Again, I put the glue. You just need enough to put in each corner and a little bit in the center, and you don't need to use a ton of glue. All right, and then this last one goes right next to the block on the other side, on the other grid paper. So, hey, these ones were pretty easy to figure out, right? All right, now we're going to make our multiple layers. So let's get started on that. So first I'm going to cut my square pieces. So we used the 4x4 size before. So now we're going to use the layering die, which I have in the center, and we're going to use that 3x3 square die to create our layers. So basically you pick the 2 next smallest below the one you use for your mat, for the mat that fits the grid anyway. All right, so I have my white cardstock here, and I'm actually going to be cutting this with the layering die. This is the layering die that fits the 4x4 square size on the grid paper. So it's pretty easy to do multiple mats, really. You just pick the next smallest ones from the mat size on the grid paper, as I said before. But you actually get to try it out today, which is really fun. All right, so I got my second layer, and now I'm going to cut a second piece. I almost went for the photo, but decided to just go ahead. I'm creating all of my layering, or should I say the second layer with white cardstock. So I just decided I might as well cut with this square again. Alrighty. Nice thing about cardstock is I don't really feel I need to use washi tape because it doesn't matter if it's crooked or not. Well, the cut shouldn't be crooked, but the paper's white no matter where you cut it. So it's different from pattern paper. Pattern paper, I might be a little more picky. All right, now I'm going to cut my photos. And again, this is actually the 3x3 size. It could fit directly on the grid. All right, so I'm just going to take my time and figure out where I want to crop it. So make sure whatever photo you use today is the subject can fit into this space. So I am using it to crop this Disneyland Sleeping Beauty's castle, which is really cute. And I thought, it looked good, even cropped a little bit smaller. It makes you focus on the castle a little more. Alrighty, so that was pretty easy to cut my photograph. And now I have those 2 layers to stick on my mat. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do this one. This is the Matterhorn mountain over there. And again, I like cropping the photos in some cases because it helps you focus on the main subject. So there's other things going on in this photograph, but this will help you really focus on that snow-capped mountain ride. So got our second square piece. Okay, so we're done with the square. All right, I'm just replacing that one using my plastic plate again. So now I'm going to grab set C here, and I'm pulling out that 5x4 layering die and now the 4x3 square die as well. So this will be our 2 layers. All right, I'm putting that one aside for now. And again, I'm going to be using the 5x4 layering die for my cardstock piece. And in case you're wondering, because we do get this question, some people ask, why do we not use the crease pad for cardstock? Because some people notice we only use it for our photographs. And that's because the crease pad does work pretty well for cutting photographs, but cardstock, it's a gamble. It may cut through your cardstock, and sometimes it won't cut through at all. Some cardstocks, it's just something that may be worth trying. Some cardstocks you could use the crease pad for, but some of them, especially if it's a very thick paper, it will not work. So you're welcome to try that out if the creases bother you on those paper cuts, but I'm just letting you know that it may not work. So there you go. So I always pretty much use the plastic plate for the paper, and the creased edges don't really bother me personally. I think most people are pickier about their photographs anyway than maybe the paper. So I'm glad we have the crease pad for the photographs so we don't get that embossed edge around it, right? And every machine is different, by the way. I know not all of them come with the crease pad. Some of them, like the We Are Memory Keepers Evolution Advance, has different settings. So if you're getting that embossed edge, you just need to change the setting so it has less pressure. So definitely check your manufacturer's instructions. If you have the Sizzix or another machine that provides a crease pad, definitely it's worth investing in. Okay, so after an explanation, I did switch. All right, I just cut that photo. This die I'm using is the 3x4 square die. Again, these photos could fit on the grid paper, but we are using it to create multiple layers. All right, so I just took my time. So I always want to put the die where I want to crop my photograph. Alrighty, so now I got this part done, and now we can add our layers to the page. Okay, I'm just placing my second layer of my photo on the parts where I want them to go. It's going to put this castle one here. It's pretty much my main focal point on that page, and the Matterhorn will go on that side. Now we just need to glue them down, which is pretty easy. It's the same directions even if you just had one layer. So I'm just adding glue to each corner in the center, and I'm just going to carefully layer it on top and take my time and make sure all the edges are the same. Okay, and so you can see I used a striped paper, and I will say striped paper, it looks pretty busy on its own, but when you put a solid piece of cardstock on top, it looks really great, and it has that like old-fashioned postcard cute look. So I like using the striped paper and a lot, and then doing a multiple layer look because it looks really good. And it doesn't look too busy because you do have a solid piece on top. So definitely try this trick with some striped paper if you're not doing that today. All right, now I'm going to add the layer for this piece. And again, just take your time, eyeball it. And then you're going to do the same thing with the photograph. You add the glue, and then you're going to take your time and make sure the white mat looks even around your photograph. Yeah, so you can always take your time, and since we are using Re-positionable glue, if later you're looking at your page and you think, well, that looks a little bit crooked, you can always fix it. So sometimes after I finish a project, I usually like to I try to remember anyway to take a step back and, make sure everything looks straight. All right, so I'm on my last piece over here. I'm gonna add the glue. Isn't it exciting to make multiple layers? And it's such an easy trick, but it looks really good. And it's just something, it adds a little more pop to your page, and it's just something a little bit different. And it's really simple to do. All right, we got those done. So you made your multiple layers. So that's so exciting. All right, so now we just need to make these smaller cuts. So let's get started. All right, so first we're going to cut that small square from set A. This is the 2x2 square size, or it also measures 2 1/8 by 2 1/8 inches. And I'm just putting on the part of the photograph I want to crop. Again, take your time if you need to. Then we're gonna roll it in through the machine. And that was pretty quick and easy, right? So there we go. And I'm actually going to use that same die again on the same photograph. The nice thing about using the small die is you still probably have plenty of room on another part of your photograph to use it on. So there we go. I get to focus on two different spots from the same photograph because I like these little lantern things. All right, we're done with that die. Alrighty. Let's see here. I'm deciding what's next. Okay, so I'm going to grab set B, and I'm also going to need set C in a little bit to cut that really tiny pink piece. But first, let's cut with the 4x2 die from set B. And that's this one that I just grabbed. All right, and I'm pulling out my pattern paper. I have some, larger photographs on the page, and I thought adding some pattern paper would balance out the design. All right, I had the crease pad there, but I'm going to move it out of the way. And now I have to grab my plastic plate, which got buried underneath stuff. So, all right, I finally got it. Okay, so I'm going to put my die on top, and you can probably see that my pattern paper has maybe you can see it or not, but it has words on it, and I'm using washi tape because I don't want them to look crooked on my page. So definitely use that washi tape if you're using pattern paper that you don't want to get crooked either. But another option is you can use a photograph here. I'm using pattern paper, but you are welcome to use cardstock and maybe add some journaling or title on it later today or after we're done. Or you can use a photograph on the same spot. It's up to you. All right, so I got that piece and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of my page. So I'm going to cut with the same paper again. I'm going to line it up carefully, then use my washi tape. Nice thing about washi tape, the photos you can't really do this on, but with paper, I think I might have mentioned this before in a previous class, but you can use the washi tape over again. So sometimes I like to stick it on top of my machine after I'm done using it so I can keep using it for other cuts. Alrighty. So I got that done. Just got to pull off the washi tape. And I got these two pieces done. Alrighty, so let's go move on. Now I'm going to make these little strip pieces, which generally I like to make the strips all the same paper or photo, whatever you're using. I'm going to be using more pattern paper. So I grabbed the smallest die from set B, and I'm going to be using the same pattern paper as I did before. Well, I have a second sheet of it. This is from a 6x6 paper pad, which is really, those 6x6 pattern paper sizes are nice for these smaller pieces because the pattern fits within that space better. All right, I'm also going to grab the smallest die from set C, and I have enough room. I can place it right next to my 1x3 die. You will definitely want to use washi tape if you want to try this out yourself, because we are going to roll both of these dies in the die machine at the same time. So this is one trick you can do if to make your cutting go a little bit faster. All right, so I'm going to roll them through the machine. And again, like I said, you will want to use washi tape because the dies could become crooked very easily in this case. So use that washi tape. All right, so I got the 1x3, and now I also have the 1x2 die done. Alrighty, so we got those two pieces, and if you did it one at a time, that's okay. You can try it out on this next one. All right, unless you're using a photo. If you're using a decorative photo, I don't recommend it, but I'm guessing for this project, you're most likely using cardstock or pattern paper to fill in these small pieces. So, alrighty. So you just place them next to each other. I have them going vertically, but you may have a pattern paper where you want to put them horizontally from each other. Just whatever works for you. They don't even have to be on the same piece of paper. You could have both of them. Like I could cut this paper in half and have them at different parts of my die machine here and roll them through. So the nice thing about the small pieces is they're small enough you can roll multiple of them at the same time. It does help to have washi tape though. All right, got that 1x2 piece and the 1x3. So we got those done. Although I think from the pattern, there is some more, we need to make a couple more 1x3 pieces. So I'm going to do that now. Just take your time, especially if you're using pattern paper. And again, I'm just using washi tape so it doesn't look crooked. All right, I'm going to roll it through. I'm going to have this done. All right. Got that one. We can do it one more time, guys. All right. That's the thing about these small pieces. Sometimes you may have to cut quite a few of them for your layouts. So I know it's like, I want to just get it done. right, I'm gonna do it again. It's the last one, guys. Although we still need to make our 1-inch squares, but this is the last time for this portion, I guess we can call it. All right, we got that done. Awesome. All right, I have all my smaller pieces ready to go, and we're gonna fill in most, well, with the exception of the 1-inch squares, it's gonna fill up most of the space that's left. And I'm just gonna start off with this bigger piece here. That was made with set B. So that was pretty easy to figure out where it needed to go, right? Filled up the whole space on the very top. And now we need to place these 1x3 strips. And from the pattern, we know it just goes underneath that big purple piece and big pink piece that we see on the pattern paper, or in the pattern. So it's pretty easy to figure out where they go, just right underneath these bigger blocks. And now I'm going to put on this 1x2, but I can see there's 2 1-inch squares on the very bottom. So I need to put it one up from the bottom, if that makes sense. Hopefully from the video you can see what I mean. So I knew the placement, and then I know the square just goes right on top of that strip we just placed down. So pretty easy. So this is why I like to start with the bigger pieces first, because, and now we're going to do it on the other side, the bigger pieces allow you to see where the smaller ones need to go. So basically, because we put the bigger pieces down, then it's not quite so difficult to figure out to put in the small filler pieces. And this is especially good to know if you at some point decide to freestyle your patterns or your page design. It's good to put the big pieces down, or your bigger, cropped photos or whatever you're using, so that way you know what to fill in when you've placed those down. So I hope that all makes sense. Again, you can always ask me questions below in the comments. So anyway, that's, especially since we're using smaller pieces today, it's a good thing to know to put the bigger ones on. Why do we put the big ones on and then the smaller ones? All right, now we're going to fill in these 1-inch squares, and I am going to be using a photograph. And that photo was, or this one was taken at Disneyland of some pretty flowers. If you don't have a photograph to use, you can use cardstock or pattern paper. But if you've already been using a lot of pattern paper, you may just want to keep it simple with some solid cardstock. All right, again, I'm lining the photo up carefully in that corner, right on the edge of the blade there. So not on top of the blade and not over the blade, just right next to it. And I'm carefully sticking some washi tape on both corners. So, all right, now I can put it through the machine. All right, just take your time, double check if you need to. Yeah, see, I need to fold over this tape because it seems the photo sticks better that way. All right, so now I can roll it through the machine, and pause the video if you need to, if you're still working on yours. I've had more practice, so I go a little bit faster maybe than some of you, so take your time. All right, so I do have some edges that didn't fit in perfectly. Again, as I mentioned before, it's not really a huge deal. I find even if the squares are a little bit off and not purely 1 inch, I mean, once I put it on my grid paper, I don't see a huge difference, or it doesn't look really off or something. So if you're worried about those extra edges coming off, just stick it on the grid paper and it'll probably look fine. Okay, I'm just scraping off the edges here. Alrighty, so I'm done with that. I grabbed some cardstock so I don't get any of the glue on my page. So that's always an option. And now I'm going to I am putting the glue on every strip here. And once you do that, I just like to take off a portion of what I'm going to fill. So right then I just took off that top 3 on the left side of my photograph because I know I needed 3 of those 1-inch photos in this part. I had some excess pieces there that I was scraping off. And now I'm going to take off this other 3 to fill in the space on the other side. Take your time, line up the square along the left corner of these 2 lines, and then make sure the lines are completely covered when you are finished. That one was kind of crooked, so I decided to redo it. And this time I'm deciding on what part of the photograph I want to pull from, so I just took it off from the bottom to fill in these last 2 pieces. All right, so got that side done. We can do the other side. Again, I'm just going to take up the portion of the photograph I want. So the nice thing about Mosaic Moments is using photographs like this. So going forward, be sure to look at your surroundings wherever you are, like Disneyland and Disney World for matter. They have beautiful flowers everywhere, and they often get dismissed, right? We just usually walk past them, but if you take your time and notice, oh my gosh, those are pretty flowers, take a picture, and then it makes a wonderful mosaic, because no one goes home and frames these photographs, but they make great details for your Mosaic Moments pages, and it's a little detail people miss otherwise, right? So I love Mosaic Moments for adding those little details that are easily missed. All right, congratulations, you finished your 4th layout. And you got to experiment making multiple layers today. It was so fun and exciting. I'm so glad that we have this page done, and you also learned about mirroring patterns. All right, yes, my page suddenly looks different. I wasn't happy with what I had before. I like these pink flowers here, and I just didn't really think they matched with the previous paper I had. I did keep a couple of the papers because they kind of have a pastel look, but I switched my other paper to a more pastel color palette. The stripes are now pastel colors, and so is the rest of the pattern paper. And I also switched to 2 photographs at the top before there was pattern paper there. But I just after I made after I made the page, I wasn't really happy. I didn't really feel that good about it. The colors just weren't working for me. So I went back and I changed them out to what you're seeing now, and I feel much better about it. I like the colors much better. They go with those pink flowers. It's a little detail I wanted to stand out a bit more. So just so you know, you can always change your page. We do use Re-positionable Glue, so I want you to feel good at the end of making your project. So just so you know, it's always an option to change it up. Anyway, that completes day 4. I hope you enjoyed today, and I'll see you at the next class. Be prepared to use some of your favorite pattern paper and embellishments. So that's a hint for what we're doing next time. See ya!